All right, thank you, everyone. So with that, we're gonna move into our session for today. So let me just make sure that I have my video on. Yep. All right, so today we're gonna be talking about some Kanaya customs, traditions, and foods. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kevin. I'm from Philadelphia, the USA. I used to live in Dubai for a bit, then I moved to India. And once I was done with college, I moved to the USA. So that's just a little bit about me. And just a reminder once again, and this would be the last day to collect material for our scrapbook. So this is our last session in the form of a class. So, just a reminder about our scrapbooking competition. I will give you the email. I do have it in my presentation to the very end, the email to which you should be sending in the scrapbooks. And, once again, just turn whatever book you're using to take notes or any other, just a notebook that you have into your scrapbook. Just get creative, just put in anything you want from our sessions, pictures, drawings, stickers, anything you want. And once you're done with it, do try and send it to us within, the early days of next week, which is, like around Wednesday to Thursday. And then on Saturday, the 17th, which would be our final session, we'll be announcing the winners for that. So just a reminder about that. And with that, we're moving into our Kananaya social customs. So talking about Kananaya social customs, we do have a lot of customs and traditions that we follow, which are pretty unique to us. And most of them are usually seen during our weddings. So if you remember our session from last week, we had a lot of customs and traditions that takes place during our wedding ceremonies, including, stuff that happens at the Chandanjartha, the Mailanji deal, Dhotu Kalyanam, Kettu Kalyanam, everything. So a lot of our customs are covered there. So I'll just go ahead and very lightly touch on all of them, just not go into detail because we did see it all last week. And the first thing that we need to understand about our customs and traditions are, so we came to India in 8345, correct? So it's been almost 1,700 years. And we did bring a lot of our traditions with us from, Mesopotamia. And once we got to Kodungalur and we lived and settled in Kerala for so many years, a lot of our customs and traditions were influenced by the customs of the place where we were living, which is Kodungalur or Kerala. And you can see it, especially if you notice our wedding traditions, we do have the Tali. So the Tali Getta was actually something that was a Hindu tradition, right? So that is something we incorporated. So a lot of our customs were influenced or changed based on the place that we lived in. And also a lot of our customs are based on the 72 privileges that were given to us by Chairman Perumal. So for example, if you remember the session from last week, we do have this tradition of, Veetleke Pradeshanam. So after the wedding, there's a procession to the house. One of the 72 privileges that we got was the privilege to ride elephants, right? So in the earlier days, the procession was done on top of an elephant, with the bride and the groom on top of an elephant, because that was one of the privileges we received. So like that, you can see a lot of things that were influenced by the 72 privileges that were given to us. And also, we were placed about 17 subcastes. So a lot of our customs and traditions are based on that as well. So talking about 17 subcasts, I don't know if you remember, I think we mentioned it in one of our earlier sessions, the caste system was a way of, of dividing or grouping the society back in the day. It's not very relevant anymore. No one follows that anymore because it's very discriminating. But back in the day, it was a privilege to have, to be held at a high position within the society. And since we were placed within a high position, a lot of our customs and traditions are also based on that high position that we had. And if you look at the slide, the last line, it does say 17 subcasts. We do have a reference to that in one of our Chandan Jatra traditions. If you remember, last week we were talking about how the village barber would come in and shave the groom at the night of the Chandan Jatra. And he asked a question to the audience, to get permission from everyone present before going ahead and shaving the groom. Does anyone remember that? Anyone at all? Just put your hands up in Zoom. I could ask you to, just let me know. Okay, I do see one hand go up. Let me see. All right, so Stephen, I'm gonna ask you to unmute. What is the question that the barber asks?
Some is I haven't been to many weddings, so something with Chiriman. I don't remember clearly. It's something with Chiriman.
I think you're pretty close to it, but the question is 17 പരീക്ഷയ്ക്ക് മേലുള്ള മാളവരോട് ചോദിക്കുന്നു മണവാള ചെറുക്കനെ ചന്തം ചേർത്തട്ടെ. So that is the question that they ask. So thank you so much for participating, Stephen. So the 17 parisha, what that means is the 17 subcastes, right? So that again is a reference to our position or the the way that we were living in that society at the time. So a lot of our customs were influenced by things like that. And also nowadays, a lot of these things are not very relevant anymore. So we really have modified a lot of our customs and traditions based on the situation or the circumstances that we're living in right now. So if you look at, for example, earlier, after the weddings, the procession would be to the house, right? No one does the procession to the house anymore. So what do? We lead the procession to the wedding hall, and it's not very feasible to get elephants now, so we don't have the elephant rides anymore, but we do still remember them as traditions that we had. And we've just modified them based on our convenience. And these are social customs, so they always can be modified. It's not much of an issue as long as we hold on to what the essence or what the what the basis or the foundation of all those traditions are. So with that, we're just going to move into look at some of our wedding customs that we have. So these customs, again, they were influenced by several different cultures. So our wedding customs are a mix of Judeo-Christian or Jewish Christian. We have Syrian and we have Hindu customs as well. And historically, like I said, I did not mention that. So our Kanai celebrations historically were done over several days. So we would have the Kaibidatham or the Uttukalyanam on one day. We would have the Chandanjathu and the Mailanji on another day. And then we would have the actual wedding. Adachudara would be coming several days after the wedding. So the whole ceremony, the entire thing was over several days. But now we just have it over 3 days. So everything from the Adachudara, Varipogela, all those traditions, they're all done at the end of the wedding day itself. So we just have it over 3 days now. And and a lot of these traditions or customs, they also include the traditional songs, the ancient songs that we have. So, that again shows how we have changed our customs and traditions based on the circumstances that we live in at the time. And going over all the wedding traditions that we have a whole list over here. I'm just going to read through them, not go into a lot of detail. So we have Kaibidatham, which is, the agreement between the uncles for the wedding, which happens at the Uttalyanam. We have Pitradhanam Nalgal, which is, giving of the dowry, which again is not a very good practice. So not a lot of people do that anymore. Then we have Chandanjathu at the groom's house, which is beautification of the groom. We have Mailanji deal, which is beautification of the bride. We have Studijulle, which is getting or asking the blessings from the elders. We have Taligatte, which is done at the actual wedding, and also Mandragodi Jarthal at the actual wedding. Berumariam, the singing of Berumariam, which is done at the end of the wedding. Then we have Vaidigarkastudi, which is getting the blessings from the priest. Procession to the house, which is now done to the reception mostly. Nadavili, Nellum Neerum, Varavidatham, which is getting blessing from the mother and Kodukal, symbolizing the unity of the couple. Kachadaragal, which is giving the first gift after the wedding, which is a piece of cloth. I hope all of you remember all of this. And then we have Illapanam, which again, I don't think is done anymore. It's just basically giving money to the bride so that it could be given to churches or, as for charity. And then we have Archadara, which is the last tradition that we have related to the wedding. So those are all our wedding traditions. And we did cover a lot of this last week. I mean, pretty much all of it last week. But I just want to bring forward one special tradition, which is very, very unique to Knanaya people. And, it's not seen at a lot of places because it's pretty much unique to one church, which is the St. Mary's Foreign Church at Chungam in Todupuzha in Kerala. So they have this tradition. Oh, I'm sorry.
I know that.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I know that.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so it's called Vendanmudi, which is called a wedding crown. Saran, do you want to just let me know what you know about that?
Like the it gets like on a special church, and like the groom puts the a crown, and the bride puts another crown, and like that.
Exactly. Are you from Todura? I mean, how do you know about this? Have you seen it before?
Because my uh, uh, because like my a relative like had that before.
Got it. Okay, so that's exactly how I learned about it as well. Thank you for saying that, Sharang. So what Sarang said is right. It is placing of a crown over the head of the bride and the groom after their wedding. And this tradition, again, I saw it at one of my cousin's wedding. My cousin got married at this church, and this is a tradition which is held by the people who get married at that parish, the St. Mary's Parish in Todupuzha. So that is basically the photo of the St. Mary's Parish, and it is one of our older churches. It was built in 1579, so it's been a long time since that church was built. Of course, it's been rebuilt over the years, but that was when the foundation stones were laid. And the basis for this tradition is that if you remember the Panam Pata that we had, right? One of our traditional songs, it mentions a crown that was given by Chairman Perumal to Kanai Thomman. And the song actually goes in the format of, a person singing it. So we did say it was sung by Hindu poets, right? So they were called as Panans. And what the story says is, it's the head Panan who is telling the story. His name is Thiruvarangan. What happened was, so, I'm just going to go over the story real quick because it's very interesting. What happened was, a long time ago when we were there in Kodungalur, we had four artisans, right? So we had blacksmiths, we had let me see, we had molders, we had blacksmiths, we had carpenters, and we had goldsmiths. So all four of these artisans, they got into a little bit of a fight in Kodungalur, and they moved to Sri Lanka, which is another country, right? It was called Iratanadu at the time. So they moved to Sri Lanka, and Cheraman Perumal wanted to bring them back to Kodungalur. So he tasked Kanai Thoman and Thiruvarangan with this. And what they did was they went to Sri Lanka to get these people back. Actually, I think Thiruvarangan went to Sri Lanka to get these people back. And they at first were very hesitant about coming back. But then, if you remember the photos of Kanaitam, and you remember he has a staff, a vadi that he holds with a little cross on top of it. So the legend goes that Kanaitam gave this staff to Thiruvarangan, who went to Sri Lanka, showed the people the staff. And when they saw the staff, they were satisfied with it. And they decided, okay, we're going to move back to Kodungalur. And what they did was they took off all their ornaments and they melted it into a crown, which they gave to Thiruvarangan, and it went to Kanai. And Kanai took this to Chairman Perumal because he was the one who wanted to bring these people back, right? And seeing that these people would be coming back, Chairman Perumal became happy and gave this crown to Kanai along with the 72 privileges. So that is what the Panan Pata says. So that is where this tradition originated. This crown is called Vendenmudi. And we don't have the original crown at the at the St. Mary's Church in Chungam. What we have is two crowns that were donated by a family called the Pachikara family. They're a Kananaya family. And what they do is they have one crown for the male and one crown for the female. And after the wedding, the groom and the bride, they go into the church rectory where these crowns are locked away, and they bring it out, and we can get pictures with it. And this is a tradition that's been going on for a long time, and we still have these crowns preserved. If you look at these photos, so I wasn't able to get a big one, or a big picture of the crown that the groom wears, but basically this is the crown that the groom wears. It's shaped like a lotus, and this is the one that the bride wears. So this is one tradition that we have, which is connected to our weddings. But again, it only happens at one parish, which is, Chungamballi. So that is one of our, one of our most notable and one of our most unique wedding traditions as well, which is Vendanmudi. So with that, I'm just going to stop there with the wedding traditions because we've covered a lot of it last week. And I do see that someone says that the mother is from that parish. So that is pretty cool. I actually feel jealous because I probably wouldn't ever get to wear that because I'm not from that parish, but it's very unique and it's pretty awesome. All right, so next up, we're going to move into our Pesaha or Passover traditions. So Pesaha, does anyone know what Pesaha is? Does anyone want to explain? I'm sure all of you know it, but Okay, we have Alexander Markil. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Yeah, I'm good. Is it like don't let the women like make like this bread, and they also make like some I forget what it's called, and then like you cut the bread. It's for like the Passover. It's the Passover meal. So Jesus' bread and body.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Thank you, Alexander. So our Passover traditions basically it's done on Holy Thursday, which is the Thursday before Good Friday, to remember the Passover or the Last Supper of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So the Passover tradition basically it's we make bread which is unleavened bread. So and along with that, we make a sweet milk. And this again is going back to the Passover traditions from the Old Testament. And what God instructed was to make bread with unleavened flour and eat it with bitter herbs. So we follow that tradition and we make the bread with unleavened flour. And the milk usually is made of jaggery or shakara. And some families have also seen they put bananas into it, which is also a tradition that we used to have before. I think earlier what they did was they had the banana separate, but now they just drop it into the milk after cutting it into slices. And this the first batch of bread and milk that we make, it is decorated with the blessed palm leaf from Palm Sunday, right before that. So if you look at the picture over here, you can see the bread and the milk and the palm leaf placed in the shape of a cross on top of both of them. And typically how it's done is, I mean, how the celebration, not the celebration, how it goes. The first batch is said to be the most sacred and is shared with just the members of the family. And what happens is once the bread and the milk is made, the oldest male in the family, which usually would be either the father or the grandfather, depending on how many people are there in the family, they would cut the bread. There might be a little bit of a prayer and also reading Bible passages. And after that, it will be distributed to all the members of the family. Typically, it goes to the males first, but I have not seen that as a rigid rule. But I'm not very sure about that. But that's how it goes. And if a family did have a death, if anyone passed away from the family, that family would not usually make the bread on Pesach, the bread or the milk, but their relatives or their neighbors would bring it to them. And then that's how they would celebrate Pesach. So that is one other tradition that we have. And also earlier, just something that I want to mention, traditionally, according to the Leviticus, so Leviticus is a book that we have in the Bible, and Levi, one of the sons of Jacob, was a priest, right? So it basically tells how a lot of our rituals, that's what the book is about, about the priests and the rituals. According to that book, the instructions were to burn away any waste materials that were left over from Pesach. So that also used to be done before. I'm not very sure if we do a lot of that now. So that is our Pesach tradition, which is one tradition that we have. Next, we're going to go into one of our other unique traditions, which is the funeral traditions that we have. So at the funeral, what we basically do is one of the biggest traditions we have is the dying person gives their final blessing to the children or the grandchildren. And this again traces back to the Old Testament where, the blessing was given to Abraham, which was given to Isaac, and then to Jacob and all their descendants. So it's a tradition that has been passed down that way. So what happens is if a person in the family is about to pass away, what we would do is the children or the grandchildren would go up to them and they would kneel down. And the person who is passing away, who is their final moments, would place their hands on top of the children, the child or the grandchild who is kneeling down, and then give them a blessing. And this tradition again is practiced among Jews as well, because that's where Jewish people, because that's where it's originated, right? And the blessing is usually in this following format. So the blessing which God gave to Abraham, Abraham to Isaac, Isaac to Jacob, Jacob to my ancestors to me, my son or daughter, I give to you. So that's how the funeral tradition or the final blessing would go. So that is one big tradition that we have. I did talk to my father about this yesterday, and I didn't know a lot about this. I'm still learning all of this, right? So that is one of our unique traditions, and he did say that he did receive it. So it's one of our big traditions, getting the final blessing from your parent or your grandparent. So that is just one funeral tradition that we have. We also have another one, which is called Tarugaga. Tarugaga, basically, if you remember, we were talking about the wedding traditions last week. We have one that says Kacha Tarugaga, where we give the kacha, which is the piece of cloth, and then we embrace the bride of the groom, right? So Tarugaga basically means to embrace. And what happens is at the funeral, but the friends and relatives would embrace the family of the deceased, that is a grieving family at the funeral. And how it's usually done is um, the family stands in line at a church. I mean, yeah, stands in line at the church, and the priest sprinkles holy water on them. And then their friends and their family would come up to them and embrace them. So that is basically how it would be done. It's just a way of giving condolences to the sorrowing family. And also after the burial at the house, there is a little ceremony where the children of the deceased would drink from a single tender coconut. Tender coconut means karika. I'm pretty sure all of you have seen it. It's the green coconut that we drink from. And what that symbolizes is it symbolizes unity within that family, right? So even though our parents are no more, we would still stay strong together in love and unity. So that's what it symbolizes. So that's the funeral traditions that we have. So one, we have Taruga, and one we have, getting the final blessings from the parents. So with that, we are going to move to clothes and ornaments. So if you look into a lot of, let's see, let's just call it traditional attire of South Indian or Keralite Christians. One of the main things that come to mind or come to notice is the chatai mundam. So that is basically one of our our identifying characteristics of the attire that we wear. So chatai mundam is traditionally worn by South Indian Keralite women, and basically what it is, it's a single piece of cloth that is a top, which is called the chata, and we have munda. And the chata is actually a of Jewish origin, and the munda is a South Indian thing, right? It's used in Kerala and Tamil Nadu. So chata and munda, that typically worn by women, but I'm pretty sure I've also seen pictures of men wearing it as well, although it might be called different. I'm not very sure. And with chata and munda, it usually is worn with just the chata and the munda when we're in the household. But women, usually when they go out, they wear this little piece of cloth over the left shoulder, which is called kavani. And my grandmother, she also used to wear a little brooch on the kavani, just as an ornament, just for a decoration. And traditionally, also when we go to church, right, well, the old women, what they would do is, or whoever wears chata and munda, they usually used to wear another piece of cloth called kasavu, which would go over the head, just to cover the head during the mass. So I'm just going to show you a few pictures of how it is. So if you look at this picture at the very left, this is usually how the chata and munda is worn. My grandmother wore this all the time. She does not wear it anymore because she's too old for it. But it takes a bit of work to wear. And also, if you look at the munda over here, so I'm just going to show you this little part. Do you see this little tail over here? So that actually is a kind of pleat that is made after wearing the munda, and it actually represents the shape of a palm leaf, right? So it's like spread out. So that is usually, so picture number one usually shows how it's usually worn. Picture number two of this amachi, it shows how we would wear the kasavu when going outside or when going to church. So we could use that like a sari to veil the house, but everything behind that is actually the chata and the munda. And chata and munda is not worn by a lot of people anymore. It usually is seen a lot during Margamkali because the traditional costume for Margamkali is chata and munda, right? So that's what we see over here. And if you look at the Margamkali costume, you can see that the munda is worn a little bit higher above the ankle than usually how we would wear it. So that's basically, what chata and munda is. It's our traditional attire. We wear it in several different ways, and also it is our costume for the Margamkali dance, which is another one of our traditions. And next up, when we talk about ornaments, we also need to talk about the kunuku or melka modira. So what this is basically an earring that is worn by people. And the interesting thing is it's worn on the upper ear. So if you look over here, it's actually worn on the upper ear, not the lower part of it. And, it actually has a a great significance within the South Indian Christian community, because a lot of Keralite Christians from old days, they always had a kunaka on their ears. If you have seen pictures of old Amachis, you can always see that kunaka. So that is another ornament, which is also something that we do traditionally, which is what we wear traditionally. And when we talk about ornaments and clothes, I also want to bring up some things from last week, which is the Kanaya Tali, which is also an ornament that we have, but it is also very unique for us because Tali is actually a Hindu tradition, right? But we modified it. Our Kanaya Tali is unique. So it is in the shape of a leaf of a tree called the peepal tree, which is called almara, and which is why the leaf is called alila, and it's shaped like that. And we have 21 beads on it. So that is what the Kanaya Tali is, which again is unique to us. And we also have mandragori, right? Which also is something that we saw last week. It is veiled over the head of the bride by the groom during the wedding ceremony. And this again is one of our traditional attires, and it's pretty important because women, the bride, they would typically preserve the mandragori from their wedding till their final days. And sometimes, or earlier, they used to be wrapped or draped in this mandragori when they were buried after their death as well. So it's something that is held very sacred and very special. And also the thread for the tali is taken from this mandragori. So that also makes it pretty important. So that is everything regarding our clothes and our ornaments. Next up, we're going to move to the interesting thing, which is food. So Kanana foods. So we basically have two major ones that I want to talk about. Everything else that I have, they're snack foods, which are seen commonly in Kerala. So typically what is attributed to us, the number one thing is this dish called pidi, right? I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of you might have eaten it because it's very, very popular within Kanai households. And then we have venpachor, which is used for the ichapad. We'll go into that. And then we have achapam, kollapam, avlosundachurtu, all that stuff, which are usually snack foods. So if you look at the picture over here, this is what, if none of you have seen it, although I'm pretty sure all of you probably have. This is what achapa is, this is what korlapa is, this is what avalosunda is, and this is what churita is. And in a lot of our families, there might be people. So for example, I have an aunt who always at some point during the year, always makes at least the korlapam and the avalosunda at her house. And this is done multiple times, and we don't have to ask her either. She just makes it as a tradition, So that is something that is just practiced or done a lot by our community. And moving on to the important ones that I want to talk about. The first one is pidi. Pidi is a traditional food which is made in Kananaya houses, and it's very popular with Kananaya people. What it basically is rice, right? So we take rice, we powder it, we roll it up into little balls like we see over here, and then we steam it and cook it. And that is basically what pidi is, and it's usually eaten with chicken curry. So we call it pidi and kori in Kerala, and it's a very, very popular dish. It's amazing. Feeling pretty hungry looking at it right now, but if you have not eaten it, I would highly recommend trying it because it's so good. And when was pidi typically made? It was usually made when sending pregnant women home for their delivery. And nowadays, not nowadays, it's also made on special occasions as well. And this again is something that's very unique to us, which is used a lot by us. And you can ask any Kannada person about pidi and kori, and they will definitely know about it. But I highly doubt that other people from Kerala, even people from Kerala itself, there might be people who don't know about this dish. So that is pidi. And next up, we have the venpacho. Venpachor is actually a pudding which is made out of rice. And this is usually prepared on the eve of a wedding for ceremonies of Chandanjartha and Mailanjidil. So if you remember, we were talking about giving Ichapar to the bride and the groom at their Mailanjidil and Chandanjartha respectively, right? So the Ichapar is actually made with the Venpachor, which is the rice pudding that we have. And earlier, if it was just the rice pudding, nowadays we have like very elaborate, very highly decorated, sophisticated versions of the venpacho. We'll be decorating it with a lot of vegetables. I've seen people make a rose with the skin of a tomato. I have no idea how it's done, but they place that on top, so it's really beautified. But that again is one of our traditions. The ichapari usually is made out of venpacho, which is given to the bride and the groom. So pidi and venpachor are the major ones that comes to my mind when I think about foods of Kranai people. So that is with the foods. Now, I also want to mention a couple of traditions that we have relating to the way we eat. So if you have ever been to a wedding, or a Kananaya wedding, or any wedding with people who are Kananaya, and the food is served on a banana leaf, if you notice, Kananaya people always fold this end of the leaf, right? They fold it underneath the leaf like that to form a little fold. And this actually translates or goes back to a tradition that we were, not a tradition, a privilege that we were given. The Kananaya people, among the 72 privileges, one of the privileges was to eat with two palm leaves. I mean, two banana leaves. I'm sorry, not palm leaves, banana leaves, one on top of the other, right? So that again was not done by everyone at the time, only certain people with a high position within the society. And why we do this nowadays is to go back and just remind us of or remember that privilege that we got. And instead of putting one leaf on top of the other now, we just modify it to fold the end of the leaf below the other. And but this again, I'm pretty sure your parents do it, your grandparents do it, I do it, every single Kanai person I know always do it if they're eating out of a banana leaf. And there's also a little bit of a story behind the folding part of it. So earlier it was placing one banana leaf on top of the other, right? So the story which I read somewhere goes that the earlier when Kanai Thoman was at Kodangalur, the servants of the king Chairman Perumal actually when he wasn't there, they got jealous for some reason and served Kanai Thoman on one banana leaf instead of two, which is what, I mean, according to the privilege he got, he should be served on two, right? And Kanai Thoman, being smart, actually folded one end of the banana leaf, to make it look like it was two leaves, right? So that's how we bring forth, or we remember that privilege that we got now. So that is one of the traditions of the related to food that we have. And another one that we have is eating from the same leaf. Now that picture that I have, that's the closest one I could find. But basically what eating from the same leaf means is two people, when they're eating together from one leaf, they would they would eat together from one leaf as a symbol of friendship and equality, right? So that is another tradition that we had, and it's just to symbolize that friendship, or that trust that we had in each other. And one important thing is, so we had this event called Konankurisha Satyam, because of which I'll get into that in a little more detail pretty soon. But what happened was the Knanaya people, they split into Knanaya Catholics and Knanaya Jacobites, right? And what happened was several years later, the second bishop of the Kottayam diocese, which is Bishop Alexander Chulaparambil, he's actually a very important person, because he really worked hard to unify both of these groups of people, right? The Knanaya Jacobites and the Knanaya Catholics. The main difference was in the rites, that is the way our Kurbana happens, but our traditions are pretty much the same. So during these reunion talks between both these people, it's said that Bishop Chulaparambil ate with the Knanaya Jacobites in this way, by eating from one banana leaf. And going to the rites once again, this also is another one tradition that we have. So like I mentioned, the Kunangurisha Satyam, what happened there was, back then we had Portuguese people in Kerala, right? So they were dominating a lot of our religious practices, basically. And but towards the end of it, so many things happened and people got fed up, and then they took an oath holding on to a cross, saying that they will not be following the Portuguese ways anymore. And with that oath, the Knanaya people split into Knanaya Jacobites. The Knanaya Jacobites follow the Eastern rite. So rite, like I mentioned, is a way of worship, right? They follow the Eastern rite, which is the Syrian rite, and the Knanaya Catholics, we follow the Catholic rite, the Syro-Malabar rite. And that's how they split up. And in 1921, which is exactly 100 years back, oh, July 5. Okay, so it was pretty recent. So what happened was Bishop Chulaparambil, he wanted to bring these people back together, right? And the issue was, Knanaya Jacobites, they have the Eastern rite, not the Catholic rite, right? I mean, or the Syro-Malabar rite, which was the recognized Catholic rite at the time. So to bring them back together, he interceded with Rome or with the Pope and asked permission to bring these people back together. And he was granted that permission. And the Knanaya Jacobite members who wanted to rejoin with the Catholics, they formed this group called the Kananaya Malangara community. Now, the important thing about the Kananaya Malangara community is that they still follow the Eastern rite, not the Syro-Malabar rite or the Catholic rite, or the way we usually have our Kurbana. So that is one very, very important thing, because not a lot of dioceses have this distinct feature. Diocese, I mean, Kottayam diocese, that is the diocese that was given to Kananaya people, right? So Kottayam diocese is very unique in the way that it has two rites. One is the Syro-Malabar rite, and one is the Syro-Malangara rite, which is the Eastern rite that we have. So that is one very important thing, or one very unique characteristic about it, and about us, I'm sorry. And this photo is the photo of Bishop Alexander Chola Paramal. He was the man who was responsible for that unification later on. And now, if you remember one major event from last week, we got a new auxiliary bishop from the Syro-Malangara side. His name is Givergis Ephraim. So now we have two auxiliary bishops, one for the Syro-Malabar side of things and one for the Syro-Malangara side of things. From the Syro-Malabar side, it's Bishop Joseph Pandarashiril, and from the Syro-Malangara side, it is Givergis Ephraim, the new auxiliary bishop. So that is pretty much everything that I had for our traditions.